Good afternoon, my name is Emma Jusans, and today I will be talking to you about the pink tax, which is defined by Candace Elliott in a Money Matters article as the extra amount women are charged for certain products or services. My claim is that products marketed towards women are more costly than products that are specifically targeted towards men. To support this claim, I will be talking about the fact that certain products in retail stores are marketed specifically towards a female audience, while others are marketed towards men, and the fact that such items are taxed differently when imported from other countries, and that tax is not always accurately represented in the retail prices. Anyone who has ever walked into a store has probably seen the signs that say men and women over different parts of the store, despite the fact that these areas contain very similar products. These men and women's sections are pre-designated for consumers so that they are encouraged to shop based off of their gender. Primary objects in these areas are sanitary items. This includes razors, shampoos, soaps, and deodorants. And often, these are marketed by the same company towards the specific genders. For example, Dove makes men's and women's soaps. These are marketed using color schemes that are geared towards these genders, so men's soaps are done in darker, cool tone packaging, and women's are in brighter, warmer colors. Another example is Gillette razors. For men, it's just Gillette razors. For women, it's Gillette Venus. Despite the fact that these razors have the exact same blade, which is shown in various reports and in press conferences by the companies themselves. Another example is the popular deodorant brand Old Spice, which markets itself specifically to a male audience by displaying generically masculine behavior in their commercials. And Secret, which is another deodorant, which is marketed towards female consumers using floral designs in their packaging and female actors regarding female issues in their ad campaigns. My next point is that items marketed towards women are taxed at a higher rate than those targeted towards men. In a fair trade article in the Business Ethics magazine of Corporate, Rose Erickson states that in the U.S., on average, the tax on imported clothing for men is 11.9%, while the tax on imported clothing for women is 15.1%. Now, these tariffs are generally linked to the demand of the items in question. Women's silk shirts have a higher import tariff because they are in a higher demand than men's silk shirts. In contrast, men's wool suits are taxed at a higher rate than women's woolen suits because they are in higher demand. However, some items that are taxed the same, such as denim, show up in retail stores at different prices. Men and women's jeans are imported with a tax rate that is exactly the same. However, they end up being priced at approximately 13% more for women than men in retail. Another example is that men's cotton shirts are imported with a 4% higher tax than women's cotton shirts, but in retail prices, women's cotton dress shirts are actually 13% more than men's cotton dress shirts. In addition to clothing, many feminine hygiene products are taxed as luxury items in tax codes. In an NPR report in 2016, it was found that 40 states and the District of Columbia taxed women's menstrual hygiene products as a luxury item. For those not familiar with the tax code, a luxury item is a high-priced good that is deemed non-essential, and they are subject to a progressive tax. A necessity is defined as bare essentials required universally for subsistence or survival, or for maintaining a certain minimum standard of living. Examples of a necessity are food, in some states, clothing. This NPR report in 2016 found that in states like Wisconsin, Viagra, which is generally deemed as a non-necessity, falls in the tax code as a necessity, while women's feminine hygiene products are in fact taxed as luxuries. The issue here is not specifically one of marketing, even though this is a high contributor to the problem. The issue is that many of these items women may be able to choose not to buy, but for things like clothing or feminine hygiene products, it's more of a need-based shopping experience. And so, despite the fact that often the price differences aren't that great, it adds up over the course of the year and becomes a seriously, a very different pay gap or price gap based off of gender. Thank you.
All right, Emma, the proposition's clearly identified, so that's solid. There's a preview of what the supporting structure is. It basically sounds like you've got two simple points. The second point is more extensive, and you've got a series of secondary issues or minor issues in that point to illustrate the idea that you're talking about. So it could maybe use a little bit more substructure on that second point, but I can see the distinction between the 2 points that you have here. You signpost those clearly in the body of the speech, so that's pretty solid. You've got good examples that you're citing. Sometimes I think you need to provide a little source citation on some of those examples, but you do have examples that you illustrate with. I thought that the strongest part of your argument was the one that did talk about the different tax policies, the various states that suggest that there is an inherent tax disadvantage to women. That's, I think, more in line with the argument that you're talking about. The issue that stuff is marketed a little bit differently, that's, I think inevitably that's probably going to be true. The notion, though, that people are influenced by the marketing is taken as a presupposition. For example, the notion that they go to the designated side to buy their food or their clothes, based on whether it's for men or women. They don't do that with food, at least that I know of. But I'm sure they do that with some of the products that you've talked about, although I'm not exactly sure that that's always the case. But your presupposition seems to be that it's all a marketing scheme to make women pay more than it is to make men pay as much as they ought to be paying. And I think that's a little bit iffy. Like I said, I thought you had some good examples. You did a pretty good job citing sources as well. Like I said, I think you could do that a little bit more on a couple of the illustrations that you have. You do a good job speaking to the audience. And at the end, I thought that you had a much clearer summary of what the argument was than what we were talking about before when you came by the office. I think that's a good exit line that you have there, that this price gap is a real thing that's happening. That's basically what your argument is, and that's fine. All right, thank you.